Mr. Bookman here. Before I go ahead and start today's audiobook, do me one small favor. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And if you like today's book, make sure you do give it a thumbs up. Also, check out the comments for discussions. But more importantly, make sure you look in the description. You're going to see a link in there that's going to give you access to over 200 ebooks. Now let's dive right into today's book.
Old Lamps for New Ones. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ruth Golding. Charles Dickens' 200th Anniversary Collection, Volume 1. Old Lamps for New Ones by Charles Dickens. The magician in Aladdin may possibly have neglected the study of men for the study of alchemical books, but it is certain that in spite of his profession he was no conjurer. He knew nothing of human nature, or the everlasting set of the current of human affairs. If, when he fraudulently sought to obtain possession of the wonderful lamp, and went up and down disguised before the flying palace, crying, "New lamps for old ones," he had reversed his cry, and made it "Old lamps for new ones," he would have been so far before his time as to have projected himself into the 19th century of our Christian era. This age is so perverse, and is so very short of faith, in consequence, as some suppose, of there having been a run on that bank for a few generations, that a parallel and beautiful idea, generally known among the ignorant as the Young England hallucination, unhappily expired before it could run alone, to the great grief of a small but a very select circle of mourners. There is something so fascinating, to a mind capable of any serious reflection, in the notion of ignoring all that has been done for the happiness and elevation of mankind during 3 or 4 centuries of slow and dearly bought amelioration, that we have always thought it would tend soundly to the improvement of the general public, if any tangible symbol, any outward and visible sign expressive of that admirable conception, could be held up before them. We are happy to have found such a sign at last, and although it would make a very indifferent sign indeed in the licensed victualling sense of the word, and would probably be rejected with contempt and horror by any Christian publication, it has our warmest philosophical appreciation. In the 15th century, a certain feeble lamp of art arose in the Italian town of Urbino. This poor light, Raphael Sanzio by name, better known to a few miserably mistaken wretches in these later days as Raphael, another burned at the same time, called Titian, was fed with a preposterous idea of beauty, with a ridiculous power of etherealizing and exalting to the very heaven of heavens what was most sublime and lovely in the expression of the human face divine on earth, with the truly contemptible conceit of finding in poor humanity the fallen likeness of the angels of God, and raising it up again to their pure spiritual condition. This very fantastic whim effected a low revolution in art, in this wise, that beauty came to be regarded as one of its indispensable elements. In this very poor delusion, artists have continued until this present 19th century, when it was reserved for some bold aspirants to put it down. The pre-Raphael Brotherhood, ladies and gentlemen, is the dread tribunal which is to set this matter right. Walk up, and here, conspicuous on the wall of the Royal Academy of Art in England, in the 82nd year of their annual exhibition, you shall see what this new holy brotherhood, this terrible police that is to disperse all post-Raphael offenders, has been and done. You come in this Royal Academy exhibition, which is familiar with the works of Wilkie, Collins, Etty, Eastlake, Mulready, Leslie, Maclise, Turner, Stanfield, Landseer, Roberts, Danby, Creswick, Lee, Webster, Herbert, Dyce, Cope, and others who would have been renowned as great masters in any age or country, you come in this place to the contemplation of a holy family. You will have the goodness to discharge from your minds all post-Raphael ideas, all religious aspirations, all elevating thoughts, all tender, awful, sorrowful, ennobling, sacred, graceful, or beautiful associations, and to prepare yourselves, as befits such a subject, pre-Raphaelly considered, for the lowest depths of what is mean, odious, repulsive, and revolting. You behold the interior of a carpenter's shop. In the foreground of that carpenter's shop is a hideous, wry-necked, blubbering, red-headed boy in a bedgown, who appears to have received a poke in the hand from the stick of another boy with whom he has been playing in an adjacent gutter, and to be holding it up for the contemplation of a kneeling woman, so horrible in her ugliness, that, supposing it were possible for any human creature to exist for a moment with that dislocated throat, she would stand out from the rest of the company as a monster in the vilest cabaret in France or the lowest gin-shop in England. Two almost naked carpenters, master and journeyman, worthy companions of this agreeable female, are working at their trade. A boy, with some small flavour of humanity in him, is entering with a vessel of water, and nobody is paying any attention to a snuffy old woman who seems to have mistaken that shop for the tobacconist's next door, and to be hopelessly waiting at the counter to be served with half an ounce of her favourite mixture. Wherever it is possible to express ugliness of feature, limb, or attitude, you have it expressed. Such men as the carpenters might be undressed in any hospital where dirty drunkards in a high state of varicose veins are received. Their very toes have walked out of St. Giles. This, in the 19th century, and in the 82nd year of the annual exhibition of the National Academy of Art, is the pre-Raphael representation to us, ladies and gentlemen, of the most solemn passage which our minds can ever approach. This, in the 19th century, and in the 82nd year of the annual exhibition of the National Academy of Art, is what pre-Raphael art can do to render reverence and homage to the faith in which we live and die. Consider this picture well. Consider the pleasure we should have in a similar pre-Raphael rendering of a favourite horse or dog or cat, and coming fresh from a pretty considerable turmoil about desecration in connection with the National Post Office, let us extol this great achievement, and commend the National Academy. In further considering this symbol of the great retrogressive principle, it is particularly gratifying to observe that such objects as the shavings which are strewn on the carpenter's floor are admirably painted, and that the pre-Raphael brother is indisputably accomplished in the manipulation of his art. It is gratifying to observe this because the fact involves no low effort at notoriety, everybody knowing that it is by no means easier to call attention to a very indifferent pig with 5 legs than to a symmetrical pig with 4. Also, because it is good to know that the National Academy thoroughly feels and comprehends the high range and exalted purposes of art, distinctly perceives that art includes something more than the faithful portraiture of shavings or the skilful colouring of drapery, imperatively requires, in short, that it shall be informed with mind and sentiment, will on no account reduce it to a narrow question of trade juggling with a palette, palette-knife, and paint-box. It is likewise pleasing to reflect that the great educational establishment foresees the difficulty into which it would be led by attaching greater weight to mere handicraft than to any other consideration, even to considerations of common reverence or decency. Which absurd principle, in the event of a skilful painter of the figure becoming a very little more perverted in his taste than certain skilful painters are just now, might place Her Gracious Majesty in a very painful position one of these fine private view days. Would it were in our power to congratulate our readers on the hopeful prospects of the great retrogressive principle, of which this thoughtful picture is the sign and emblem! Would that we could give our readers encouraging assurance of a healthy demand for old lamps in exchange for new ones, and a steady improvement in the old lamp market! The perversity of mankind is such, and the untoward arrangements of Providence are such, that we cannot lay that flattering unction to their souls. We can only report what brotherhoods, stimulated by this sign, are forming, and what opportunities will be presented to the people, if the people will but accept them. In the first place, the Pre-Perspective Brotherhood will be presently incorporated, for the subversion of all known rules and principles of perspective. It is intended to swear every PPB to a solemn renunciation of the art of perspective on a soup plate of the willow pattern. And we may expect, on the occasion of the 83rd Annual Exhibition of the Royal Academy of Art in England, to see some pictures by this pious brotherhood realizing Hogarth's idea of a man on a mountain several miles off, lighting his pipe at the upper window of a house in the foreground. But we are informed that every brick in the house will be a portrait, that the man's boots will be copied with the utmost fidelity from a pair of bluchers sent up out of Northamptonshire for the purpose, and that the texture of his hands, including 4 chilblains, a whitlow, and 10 dirty nails, will be a triumph of the painter's art. A society, to be called the Pre-Newtonian Brotherhood, was lately projected by a young gentleman under articles to a civil engineer, who objected to being considered bound to conduct himself according to the laws of gravitation. But this young gentleman, being reproached by some aspiring companions with the timidity of his conception, has abrogated that idea in favour of a pre-Galileo brotherhood now flourishing, who distinctly refuse to perform any annual revolution round the sun, and have arranged that the world shall not do so any more. The course to be taken by the Royal Academy of Art in reference to this brotherhood is not yet decided upon, but it is whispered that some other large educational institutions in the neighbourhood of Oxford are nearly ready to pronounce in favour of it. Several promising students connected with the Royal College of Surgeons have held a meeting to protest against the circulation of the blood, and to pledge themselves to treat all the patients they can get on principles condemnatory of that innovation. A pre-Harvey brotherhood is the result, from which a great deal may be expected by the undertakers. In literature, a very spirited effort has been made, which is no less than the formation of a PGAPCB, or Pre-Gower and Pre-Chaucer Brotherhood, for the restoration of the ancient English style of spelling, and the weeding out from all libraries, public and private, of those and all later pretenders, particularly a person of loose character named Shakespeare. It having been suggested, however, that this happy idea could scarcely be considered complete while the art of printing was permitted to remain unmolested, another society, under the name of the Pre-Laurentius Brotherhood, has been established in connection with it, for the abolition of all but manuscript books. These Mr. Pugin has engaged to supply in characters that nobody on earth shall be able to read, and it is confidently expected by those who have seen the House of Lords that he will faithfully redeem his pledge. In music, a retrogressive step in which there is much hope has been taken. The P.A.B. or Pre-Agincourt Brotherhood has arisen, nobly devoted to consign to oblivion Mozart, Beethoven, Handel, and every other such ridiculous reputation, and to fix its millennium, as its name implies, before the date of the first regular musical composition known to have been achieved in England. As this institution has not yet commenced active operations, it remains to be seen whether the Royal Academy of Music will be a worthy sister of the Royal Academy of Art, and admit this enterprising body to its orchestra. We have it on the best authority that its compositions will be quite as rough and discordant as the real old original, that it will be, in a word, exactly suited to the pictorial art we have endeavoured to describe. We have strong hopes, therefore, that the Royal Academy of Music, not wanting an example, may not want courage. The regulation of social matters, as separated from the fine arts, has been undertaken by the pre-Henry VII Brotherhood, who date from the same period as the pre-Raphael Brotherhood. This society, as cancelling all the advances of nearly 400 years, and reverting to one of the most disagreeable periods of English history, when the nation was yet very slowly emerging from barbarism, and when gentle female foreigners, come over to be the wives of Scottish kings, wept bitterly, as well they might, at being left alone among the savage court, must be regarded with peculiar favour. As the time of ugly religious caricatures, called mysteries, it is thoroughly pre-Raphael in its spirit, and may be deemed the twin brother to that great society. We should be certain of the plague among many other advantages if this brotherhood were properly encouraged. All these brotherhoods, and any other society of the like kind now in being or yet to be, have at once a guiding star and a reduction of their great ideas to something palpable and obvious to the senses, in the sign to which we take the liberty of directing their attention. We understand that it is in the contemplation of each society to become possessed, with all convenient speed, of a collection of such pictures, and that once every year, to wit upon the 1st of April, the whole intend to amalgamate in a high festival, to be called the Convocation of Eternal Boobies. End of Old Lamps for New Ones, by Charles Dickens, 1850.
Mr. Bookman here. I hope you enjoyed today's audiobook. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and go ahead and tell us what you thought about the book in the comments. But more importantly, don't forget to check out the description. It's got a link in there that's going to give you access to over 200 ebooks. And we'll see you next time. And remember, you are appreciated.